So I'm going to ask Ted to start us off. Take it away, Ted.
Great. Thanks, Pam. So I wanted to welcome everybody to this first in a series of community forums that are co-sponsored by the Tam Valley Neighborhood Response Group Network, Tam Valley NRG Network, Tam Valley Firewise, and the Southern Marin Fire Protection District. My name is Ted Barone. I'm the vice chair of the Tam Valley NRG Network. You've already met Pam, who is the chairperson of this network. So this series is geared towards the residents of Tam Valley on topics related to the preparation for, prevention of, response to, and recovery from public emergencies, particularly wildfire, earthquake, and flooding. Our topic for tonight is, of course, evacuation from Tam Valley, particularly during a wildfire incident. The next forum, scheduled for November 17th, will focus on the state of the Southern Marin Fire District and Firewise programs, particularly on what our votes for measures C and U have and will bring to us here in Tam Valley. Subsequent topics will be determined by the residents in Tam Valley. So if you have suggestions, please feel free to note them in the chat window on this Zoom event, or you can send them to the Tam Valley NRG Network email. Maybe Pam, you can post this in the chat room at tamvalleynrg@gmail.com. Please use that email to ask us questions about becoming a block captain as well. We need you to step up. As our motto is, together we are safer and stronger. So the format for this evening is as follows. Our first responders will describe their plans and the strategies for evacuation for Tam Valley for about 25 to 30 minutes. We will then open up for a conversation with all of you. And as Pam said, please post your questions and comments in the Zoom chat area. And Pam will then moderate this conversation. We expect to be done somewhere around 8 o'clock, but if we need to extend, we'll be happy to do that. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Chris Tubbs, who is Chief of the Southern Marin Fire Protection District, who will make some introductory comments and introduce our guest speakers for the evening. Chris, it's all yours.
And thank you very much. And Pam, I really appreciate all the work that you guys have done to help set this up. This is amazing. What a turnout tonight. I'm just really pleased to see the level of interest and the level of engagement. So we're really looking forward to being here. So as Ted said, my name is Chris Tubbs. I'm the Fire Chief of the Southern Marin Fire District and the Mill Valley Fire Department. Just real briefly, for those who may not know, the Mill Valley Fire Department and Southern Marin Fire District are in a shared services agreement where we've combined our senior administrative team and our prevention team into one organization. And we're hoping that this leads eventually to a consolidation of both agencies because we believe it will result in better service for the community. But that's a topic for another day. We're all here tonight to talk about wildland fire and specifically evacuations. And this is an area of interest that we have heard across the entire district and city. It was one of the most popular topics, if you will, of interest. But before we sort of jump into that, I'd like to just provide a little bit of context about why this is important and why we want to be talking about this. And I think everyone knows, we're in the middle of fire season, but since fire season started this year across the state, we've had over 8,800 fires that have consumed in excess of 4 million acres. This year, 5 of the fires we've had to date have now jumped into California's top 20 largest fires in California history list. The August complex has taken position number 1, having burned in excess of 1 million acres so far, and we've lost over 935 structures in that fire. Sadly, we have also lost 24 of our fellow Californians in the fires this year. So as we look to the fire season, as you know, the fire season is not a short period any longer. It seems to get longer each year. And the predictive services are telling us that the drier and warmer than average conditions over Northern California will exist through December. In January, we expect to return to sort of normal conditions. The above normal cured fire fuel crop will be vulnerable to rapid spread rates and extreme fire behavior during dry, breezy weather events, which of course we just went through this weekend, which tend to peak in intensity in October and November. Southern California is facing the same thing through December. So again, I share that not because I think it's a surprise to anyone, but really to sort of put a context to this discussion tonight and recognizing its importance, and especially around evacuations out of Tam Valley, where some of our routes in and out are limited. And of course, that results in real heightened concern on the part of the community. And that's what we want to talk about with you tonight. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Tom Welch, our Deputy Chief of Operations. Tom?
Thanks, Chief. Really appreciate that. Tonight, what we're going to do is we intend to take the anxiety level that is up here and the reality level that is down here and bridge that gap. And I hope that after tonight, the information that we share, we give you confidence that you can navigate through an evacuation should one be necessary, and that you are putting thought together so that you can easily make decisions and be agile as you move through. So I'm going to go through introductions. I'm going to talk a little bit more than Chief Tubbs about the fire season. Going to go through evacuation alerts and warnings, protecting your home, and organizing your neighborhood. But the first is that I want to talk about is a level of experience on this team that's talking today. We have Sergeant Mike Dobbins from the Marin County Sheriff's Office, who brings years of experience. Chief Tubbs, myself, Chief Hilliard, our fire marshal is also on the call, and then Marshall Now, fire inspectors on the call too. And we're going to go through and talk to you about 20 to 30 minutes or so, and then get to the real meat and potatoes of what tonight's about, which is getting your questions answered and your concerns answered, so that you're better informed. And once again, that anxiety level comes down a little bit. So Predictive Services is a service that's located up in Reading for us, and they look at the North State. And here's what we're looking at. Just to start off, we've been watching fire season since January. Fires were throughout the Bay Area. Small little fires were popping throughout the Bay Area in January. February, we had some rain in April and May, but then June, July, August, September, October have impressed us. We've been running fires from the Oregon border all the way to the Mexico border and everywhere in between. We've been exceedingly busy and on track to be one of the worst fire seasons of this year. This little picture here provides some information, talks about how September has been above normal, and that was absolutely 100% true. And then October is, a good portion of the state is to be above normal. And then hopefully by mid-November to late November, we get some season-ending rain for the northern part of the state. But as Chief Tubbs talked about, the southern part of the state is just going to take off, and we anticipate wildland fires in that area through December and into January. I myself have fought fire in Southern California over Halloween and also over Thanksgiving, and I have friends who have fought fire in Southern California over Christmas and New Year's. So it definitely happens, and it seems to be happening with more frequency now. What's causing all this? The cause really is about drought. And as you can see throughout the state here, in the northern part of the state, there are areas that are under extreme drought conditions. And then as you drop down through the state, you move into severe and then moderate drought. Us in Marin, we're at that severe and to moderate drought area in the Bay Area. And so this is the backdrop to this fire season. This and fuels that are unmanaged and ready to burn, a tree kill off that we have never seen in my lifetime anyway, running through the Sierras, adding fuel to the fire as well. So this is what's causing all of that. What we're really trying to do here is improve our odds. And I use this quote often from Ron Vidal, former Emergency Preparedness Commission member up in Mill Valley. And he says, there are no guarantees in life. All we're trying to do is improve our odds. And the fact that you're here with us tonight is improving your odds. It would be better, though, if you take this information that we provide and turn it into action. Actually build that grab and go bag that you've been talking about. Actually build that grab and go checklist that you've been wondering about. Actually maybe practice a walkout of your neighborhood. Actually connect with your really means. And I think for many people, it means get to San Rafael, get to Oakland, get to San Francisco, get out of the area. And that might be the ultimate goal, and eventually we'll get you there. But moving from harm's way to non-harm's way is really what the goal is. And so that's why we have some alternate strategies for you to think about as you evacuate. But it really starts here, neighbors helping neighbors. If you don't have to love your neighbors, you don't even have to really like your neighbors, but you do have to know them, and you have to be willing to help them. And this is why I love what Pam and Ted and so many are doing in the Tam Valley, is they're interconnecting the neighborhoods, because there was a study done in 2011 out of Japan following the tsunami. And what it said was an interconnected neighborhood increases the survivability profile. So we all know that there are neighbors amongst us who we don't see a whole lot, that maybe are shut in most of the time, but we need to engage them and reach out to them to the extent possible. And then obviously we need to be willing to help them if necessary. And I'll tell you a quick story from the Tubbs fire in Sonoma. I was going door to door helping folks out. I was working with law enforcement folks evacuating a neighborhood. And I was helping the folks who were disabled, the folks who were elderly and were moving a little bit slow or had a little hitch in the giddy up or what have you. And I know for a fact that the houses on either side were fully facultied families that that could have helped and didn't. And so these folks were just basically left for dead. And so I can't stress enough how you have to know your neighbors and be willing to help them. And it's just one of those things where I think that we've lost something.
Are you guys considering any training programs for them to undergo?
Maybe we can mute them.
For the short term, and if you're not, maybe want to discuss.
I'm just going to mute everybody here. Sorry about that. So neighbors helping neighbors. So the first thing to understand about evacuation are the time phases. I'm going to walk you through this quite quickly, but it's very important information. First off, incident detection time. To keep the incident detection time low is when you see something, please say something. Call 911. If you see smoke on a hill, even if it's behind a house and it might be a barbecue, give us a call. We're happy to come out and confirm that. We'd rather be right in that situation. And so we're a very interconnected community. We're paying attention, we're vigilant, and those things decrease the incident detection time. So, and that's the time that the incident starts, whether it's a fire in the wildland or in a structure or what have you, that we detect it and that we call 911. Also, just so you know, we do have cameras that you have access to too, up on Mount Tam and Wolfback Ridge that we can control, move around and zoom in on the fire. And in fact, when there's a 911 call for a vegetation fire or a structure fire, that's the first place I go as the operations chief. I want to understand the size, the scope of the fire. I want to put the weather conditions, look at the fuel topography, and make a good guess about how and where we're going. And then I provide situational awareness to our responders. And that leads us to the next item, which is decision and lead time for the ICs. So we have a coordinated response with our law enforcement partners. As I said, Sergeant Dobbins is on the phone to help answer any questions when we're done. And we send a lot of fire engines. So on a wildland fire, we'll typically send 4 fire engines, a helicopter, a bulldozer, 2 hand crews, 2 air tankers, and air attack. We send it all. And then our county fire partners will augment that response with more fire engines. And so we'll send a lot of equipment really fast. We have a lot of assets and people at risk. And so we understand that if we can just put the fire out, a lot of our problems go away. Leading the crew are folks like Sergeant Dobbins and our battalion chiefs. And these are generally our most senior firefighters, our most experienced firefighters, and they are gifted at leading the troops. They get on scene and they're going to form what's called a unified command. So law enforcement and fire working together hand in hand, whether they're sitting in the same vehicle, on the same hood, they're looking at the same situation. They're evaluating all of the elements that go into a wildland fire, and they're making a decision. And they're deciding who's at risk first, who we need to evacuate first and notify first. And so that decision can take seconds and minutes for them to really evaluate what's going on and then provide warning, time, and notification. And that's really the next element of the evacuation time phases. And that runs through a whole landscape of notifications. And what we really try to do is we try to make the level of notification commensurate with the risks that are associated. So I'll just start and go through each one of these, and I'll start at the bottom. Social media, that's a great place to gather information. Oftentimes it's not real-time information. And all I ask is that you confirm the source that you're getting the information from before you take action based on social media. And for instance, 2017, there was a lot of buzz on social media about Mount Tam being on fire. Well, Mount Tam wasn't on fire. We have cameras that look all over Mount Tam, and that wasn't the case. But we spent a lot of staff time debunking that myth that was out there on social media. So I just ask that you really review the source. If it's Marin County Sheriff, that's a pretty darn good source. If it's Southern Marin Fire Protection District, that's an excellent source. If it's somebody you don't know or recognize, that's probably not a great source. As we move up the list, though, Nixle is another great service. And if you are not signed up for Nixle, you should sign up for Nixle, and you do that by texting to 888-777 your zip code, and then you'll get a reply back, and all of a sudden you're getting Nixle messages. Nixle is widely used by law enforcement in this county, and they provide good situational awareness about incidents that are occurring throughout. You can also go online and sign up for Nixle. It's just a great resource to gather some real-time information. As we move up the list, Everbridge is another link in the pyramid here, and that's operated by the Marin County Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services. And that's what reverse 911, where we do mass notifications, but we can also get quite surgical about that. And they offer a system through there called Alert Marin. And if you go to Alert Marin, which is www.alertmarin.org, you should sign up every single phone that you have. Even if you have an old rotary phone, you should sign it up. If you have Comcast voice over internet, you should sign it up. All of your cell phones and anybody that you want notified, maybe within your family, of an incident occurring in your neighborhood that we're using this system to notify you, you should sign them up too. And so that way we can notify you. Incidentally, here on Nixle and Alert Marin or Everbridge, if you sleep with your phone downstairs, or you turn it off at night, or you put it on airplane mode, just understand that you're taking one of the ways that we can communicate with you quickly, and you're disabling it. So just think about that, especially on those days that Chief Tubbs talked about, the red flag days, which seem to be going up in frequency and intensity now. So that's an important system, and you can go to Alert Marin and sign your folks up and learn more about that. As you go up there, sirens, horns, and speakers, there's a lot outdoor alerting systems that have been installed in Mill Valley and are being extended throughout the Southern Marin Fire Protection District. Tam Valley is going to get one too. It's going to be a multi-phase project over a few years, and Chief Hilliard's working to implement that project. But that's just another system that we have to notify you. Incidentally, the LRAD system provides actionable information to you. It's not only an alert, but it provides a message about protective actions that you can take. And Chief Hilliard will probably answer more questions about that later. But going up the pyramid here, you got the wireless emergency alert system. That's those texts that you'll get from us, or sometimes from the president. Oftentimes you get it because there's been a child abduction or something along those lines. But we certainly use this to alert you of an incident in your area and provide you some actionable information that you can utilize. And then there's the old emergency alert system. That's the radio and telephone system. And that's another system that's broad, area wide. And then you can also put in there the NOAA radio system, which our friends at Fire Safe Marin are piloting right now. And we'll talk more about that too, I think. So long and short of it is all these systems are great, but none of them are foolproof. They all have holes in them. And what we do is based on the severity of the incident, we line as many of them up as we can to make sure that you're notified. And that's our pledge to you. We want to notify you so that you can take protective actions should you need. So if we go back to this, that's the warning time, and our sheriff's office is quite well trained at providing those notifications using those tools that we had just talked about. And doing that takes minutes and seconds sometimes. Here's the most important part for you: preparation time. Are you prepared to go? Can you leave in minutes and seconds? That's the most important thing. Do you have a grab and go bag? Do you have a plan? Are you the kind of person that's going to run around last minute and take 10 minutes to gather up all those things? We can do everything perfect. We can do incident detection time. We can have the exact right response, the right people. We can, our sheriff's office can do the awesome warning and notification within, a good time frame. But if you're not prepared to go, then we're losing minutes and seconds that might matter to you. So my ask of you is that you take the time to prepare, and that you take the time to think through a plan and how you're going to notify your neighbors and how you're going to work your way out. But prep time is a big deal. I can build a 6-lane highway from, the top of Tam Valley to the bottom to make sure all the roads are wide open and good to go. But if everybody's not prepared to leave, it's not worth much. Network clearing: how long will the roads take to clear? And I can tell you this, I tell everybody this: there's a million ways to fail. And I'll show you a picture of a failure, but there's a million ways to fail at evacuation. A tree goes down, a telephone pole goes down, an oak tree, a traffic accident occurs, a vehicle stalls. There's all sorts of ways to fail at evacuation, and network clearing is generally measured in a range. We have, our experience tells us what we think it's going to be about, and our law enforcement officers have plans to control specific intersections to ensure that we have good flow. So you take all of these things, and this is the evacuation time, and they all have to occur, and they all need to occur sometimes quite quickly. Here's a picture of a failed evacuation. This is a tree that came down across the road. This is a CHP officer. So these things happen to us as well, who was in a traffic accident with another vehicle. This is Highway 12 in Sonoma County. What we want to talk really about today is about evacuation, that you should know 2 routes and have 2 modes. And we'll get into that. Well, 2 routes is just understanding 2 ways from your home. And, that first way, the way you go to the grocery store, might be your number 1 way. And then the second way, could be any number of other ways based on those conditions. It's just like a movie theater. There's multiple exits in a movie theater. For some of you, there's only 1 exit, and that makes it quite clear where you have to go and what you have to do. But for many people, there are multiple ways to go. And just like in a movie theater, I can't tell you which exit to go. I can't tell you left or right. All I can demonstrate to you is the options that you have, and that you have to make an assessment based on what you're seeing, and then make the best decision for yourself. And so in a movie theater, 50% of the people are going to try and go out the door they came in, but the rest will look around at the other exits, and they'll make a good decision about where to go. 2 modes just talks about, your vehicle being that primary, probably best mode of evacuation. Just take 1 car, because more cars, it makes more trouble for more people. And so it's a great way and a safe way to evacuate, right up until the point it's not. And so because we have such narrow streets, sometimes you might have to abandon 1 vehicle and maybe get in another vehicle and move your way down till you get to the flats. Here's what I know. I know that if I can move people from risk, which is up in the hills, down to the flats, as soon as I can get you to the flats, your survivability profile goes way up. And that means more people saved. And this leads us to a new concept that we're talking about a lot, which is community refuge areas. I apologize, this isn't the Tam Valley map. I tried to upload it into there and I had some struggles with it, but this is a map that demonstrates and has been mailed to you now twice and is available on the Southern Marin Fire Protection District website for download as well. But what this map demonstrates is the primary and secondary evacuation routes. And in this case, it identifies steps, lanes, and paths for your consideration as options to evacuate as well. And the blue areas are those community refuge areas. Those are the areas that we've identified as being safe. You can go there and it will be potentially smoky. There might be embers that are down on coming down on you, but there won't be heat and you could easily go. And this is a concept that we've used in the fire service for decades now, where we'll duck out into areas, wait for conditions to change, and then re-engage. And so we came up with a little moniker here, which is go, wait, listen, go to safety. And that safety might be out of the area if you can do such things, but it also might be down to a community refuge area. And I'll just tell you this, probably nobody on this call has been evacuated more than my family 4 times since 2017, although there may be. My wife is an expert at it. She has her grab and go bag. She's got a plan with my daughter and my aunt, and they moved down to the local mall, which is well within urban Santa Rosa, and they sit there because thousands of people are trying to move their ways out of the hills, and they'll wait for all those folks to kind of come through a couple of hours, sometimes less, 60 to 90 minutes, and then they'll move out to wherever their destination is for evacuation. So the moniker Go Wait Listen is just something for you to consider if there's a fire in your neighborhood, or if traffic is such that you can't make it out, that you might be moving to these areas instead. This is a picture of the mailer here. Yours probably had a Marin County Sheriff logo on it and a Southern Marin Fire Protection District logo on it, but it just offers information for you to think about inside and outside of your home, within your neighborhood, some grab and go things that you might consider. Talks to you about some of the alerting nomenclature that you might hear: evacuation order, evacuation warning, shelter in place, things of that nature. It's a really good document, and it's one I envision being stuck to it with a magnet on your refrigerator, and then grabbed when it's time to evacuate, and it'll help guide you. It has a map and it shows those community refuge areas for you too. So it's a really great document, and you've been mailed it twice, and it's also downloadable for you. Now, some people might say, community refuge area, what the heck? I'm not going there, kind of thing. And so, this is a picture of a community refuge area. This is Edna McGuire School, and I'll show you some in your area. And the most apocalyptic fire that I can think of or have ever been a part of, and I've been a part of some doozies, with all of these homes burning and all of that school burning, you are still safe as kittens right on that second base. In fact, I can put not hundreds, but probably thousands of people on that ball field and be a-okay. Like I said, it'll be smoky. There might be some embers, and but it won't be hot, and you'll be just fine. And here's some proof and concept pictures too. I'll show you a little bit later. Tam Valley School also has a ball field and a playground. This can hold several people who might want to duck out and need a place to go, community refuge area. Here is 100 Shoreline, and there's parking underneath there. This will also be another place where you can push what we call a tactical pause and take a timeout until the traffic relieves, and then make your move to your place. Once again, your goal is to get out of the area, but your real goal is to move out of harm's way. And moving to one of these CRAs, should you choose, is an option to you. Tam High School is another option right here. You can see all the green fields. Even with all of these homes burning up the hill from Tam High, this is an a-okay safe place to be as a community refuge area. Plus there's the ball courts, parking lots, and things of that nature at this place as well. So community refuge areas were started in Southern Marin. We came up with the idea, and it's since translated out throughout the county and then throughout the state too. And our friends in Australia, they've been doing it for quite a while. They've been besieged by fires as bad as we have. And here they are, they've moved to a beach. and they've taken a horse. Here's some more folks hunkered down at the beach right here while the wildland fire burns up towards the beach. These people are all safe and they're all going to survive. Here again, our folks here waiting on the beach as fire burns down into their community. So this is just another option for you. We call these community refuge areas. They might call it a picnic here, but this is just proof and concept that these places are safe to be. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marshall now, who's going to talk about defensible space. And you might just ask, why are we talking about defensible space during an evacuation drill? And here's what I want you to think before he takes it over, is that it is a wicked different experience when you're evacuating down a road with all of the homes on fire versus just a low intensity fire. So if we can defend our homes and have them not all catch on fire by doing good vegetation management, then we're going to decrease the intensity of an evacuation. And so Marshall, if you're there, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Chief Welch. Well, as you heard, my name is Marshall now. My title is Fire Inspector, one of many, both in Southern Marin and throughout the county. And thanks to the Marin Wildfire Protection Authority in Marin County, that is a growing number. So the reason why I mentioned that is whether you're new to California, new to Marin County, or new to our immediate area, the wildland urban interface is something that all of Marin County is highly focused in on right now. And what you see on the screen right now is our defensible space inspection form. You may have received one of these in the past, or you likely will receive one in the future. This is kind of a quick glimpse of what's going on in your property. So if you receive this, obviously you have a duty to act and something to get done, but then also it's giving you that opportunity to have fire inspector's perspective on what's going on in the property. I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to cover, some zones and some of the basic concepts of defensible space. It's probably going to generate a lot of questions, and I encourage you to go to Fire Safe Marin and look up more information, or go to our website, southernmarinfire.org, and find out more information as far as what defensible space is. Like I mentioned, there might be people that are brand new to this concept, or veterans who have had one of these forms stuck on their door once or twice. So a moniker that we really like to instill is lean, clean, green, and seen. And that basically is how you look at your property, your vegetation, the combustible material around your home, and how you implement action on them to make them more viable. And like Chief Welch mentioned, defensible space is paramount, because even though this is a preventative measure that we can take to hopefully eliminate the spread of a fire, what it's really going to do also is buy you time in the essence of an evacuation order or warning that comes through. It's going to buy you time to leave, and it's going to buy the fire department time to get there to slow that spread of the fire through a community. So again, a lot of information here. I'm not going to be able to touch it all. I'm going to breeze through it. But starting off, this is one of the newer zones, Zone 0. Traditionally, we've only had one or two zones that we've talked about for decades. That 100 feet of defensible space, if you've heard it in California before. Zone 0, this is talking about the structure itself immediately around it. It's actually 0 to 5 feet. So it's the structure plus 5 feet around it. A lot of science has been coming out since 2017. All of our lessons learned, a lot of laboratory scientists have been basically burning buildings down in laboratories and finding out what the immediate effects and risks are. That's kind of what this little data sheet here is highlighting. But what the science is showing right now is this is probably one of the areas that, if kept clean, can exponentially increase the odds of your home surviving, and again, buying you that time to evacuate. Going on to the rest of the zones, and I apologize, I know I'm going very fast, but this is kind of just a highlight on what defensible space is. And then again, each one of these topics you can go down in depth if you have the time. You could Fire Safe Marin itself is kind of a rabbit hole of information, from everything from go bags to defensible space. So like I had mentioned, Zone 1 and Zone 2, these are your standard 0 to 100 feet around your home. We're modifying the fuels and the combustible material. Each zone has specific requirements on what you can have there and where things may need to be relocated. For example, wood piles or anything like that. It does include every portion of your property. So, or structure, sorry. So decks and outbuildings also have this bubble, in essence, that we're building around them. all buying time for people to be able to move through. What it does is it helps keep the fire at a low intensity if it does move through your landscape. The goal is if a fire does enter your landscape, it doesn't move rapidly, it does not move fast or grow in intensity, and hopefully doesn't get to the building at all. And that low intensity fire is what I'm going to be really talking about for the most part, wrapping this up, going into zone 3. And that's because one of our ordinances for Marin County is that along the sides of roadways, that vegetation, that fuel, those combustible materials are designed and required to be maintained and minimized. Again, maintaining that low intensity fuel load means that in the event of an evacuation, that fuel along the side, that fire intensity along the side of that road will be kept to a minimum and will burn out quickly. This gives you time and comfort to pick your route, to change your mode if you need to switch from vehicle to by foot, and back into a vehicle potentially. Whatever your options are, having a low intensity fire along the side of the roads really makes a world of difference. And we understand our roads. You drive them every day. You know that we can't get any more roadway there. So what we have right now is our paved road fuel reduction program, which is maximizing the square footage of the road surface that we already have, increasing it so there's no barriers overhead for our largest apparatus. So whether it's a fire engine or fire truck, whatever's going up and down that road, we've just created a huge tunnel basically for us to be able to go on. And now we're effectively helping to modify and limit the fuel loads along the side of the road in order to minimize the fuel load, minimize the fire intensity, and maximize our ability to use that entire road surface for both engines and first responders coming up the hill and residents evacuating or going down the hill. And then just to touch on it, because it's here, one of the new zones that's referred to through Firewise USA is Zone 4. This is a non-enforceable zone, but it's kind of the underlying message to this whole presentation, and it's all about community. This is once you've established your property and gotten it safe, getting to know your neighbors, lending a helping hand, and really engaging the proper your neighbors and other property owners to make sure that everyone is on the same page and we're doing our part to make sure that our community is safe. So again, very fast, a lot of information, and I can say I can speak for hours on this topic. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate, reach out to your local fire prevention agency. If you're on this call and you're from anywhere in Marin County, any one of the fire prevention agencies in the jurisdictions and districts is more than willing to come out and walk your property with you and take a look at what you got going on. So thank you.
Thanks, Marshall. Both Chief Tubbs and I were up on the glass fire, and these are some photos that were taken, and they just serve to demonstrate what Marshall's talking about as far as managing fuels. I mean, we're not looking for like this in Tam Valley, but we are looking for some good fuel reductions. And I just want to show you that the intensity of the fire is far more sustainable when it's just small fuels, like when you've weed whacked all the way down, you've limbed up your trees and you've spaced your vegetation. It's a different game for us on the experience. And then you can see across the way down there is a house that's on fire, and people have to pass by that house to evacuate from this area. This is Los Alamos Road area. And it just really demonstrates how a low intensity fire, by managing our vegetation, by Chief Hilliard's team doing the street clearing, vegetation along the streets, it's just going to make evacuation that much more efficient and more effective. I don't think we're going to talk about these groups because I think we're going to leave it to Pam and Ted to talk about these groups. But this gets us to the kind of the heart of this, the meat and potatoes of things, which is getting your questions answered. So I think we're done, and we have Sergeant Dobbins, myself, Chief Tubbs, Marshall Now, Chief Hilliard, all here to help you through that process.
Great. Thank you so much. This is really wonderful. And we do have a series of questions that have already been asked, and I'm sure we'll get some more, but let's just jump in. First question is, will we be directed to holding areas, or should people try to access 101 to leave Marin?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. It's one that there could be direction provided to move to your closest community refuge area that we've identified. There also could be a decision point for you on how traffic looks, what you think it's going to look like. And I only bring this small anecdote about traffic, which is I'm sure we all remember pre-COVID. For you in Tam Valley, it's probably every Saturday and Sunday. But pre-COVID, when school's getting out at about 3 o'clock, traffic is just miserable, right? And what we figure is that's about 30% of the population on the road at that time, moving folks around. And so I'm not sure that if that's what it looks like with 30%, what does it look like with 70%? It can look quite different. And so just you understanding your options about where those community refuge areas are, and if you think you need to move to one of them, that's just leagues ahead of majority of the population. I think there's 7,000 residents, homes in Tam Valley proper, I think, right around. And going up. Okay, great. So add some numbers to that, but there's 7,000, and I'm counting 77 homes on this call. So there's a lot more work to be done for educating our population for sure on these opportunities and options.
Thank you. Next question is, why have we not had a full-scale Tam Valley evacuation drill?
Boy, that might be a good one for Chief Hilliard.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we have actually had in Tam Valley, we did a drill. It was about, I think it was a year ago. And our plan this year was actually to have 4 drills. We were going to do 4 drills throughout the district. Drills are coordinated. We're looking forward to our relationships with NRG and the communities as far as the Firewise communities to put these evacuation drills together, but they do take some effort. One of the problems that we had this year, obviously, or the big problem we had this year, was COVID. We weren't really allowed or able to put together a big evacuation where we would have a location where everybody would come. And normally what we do is we have, tables and tents and different people from around the county, including the Red Cross and the sheriff and Fire Safe Marin, handing out material, because we couldn't get that many people in one location. We just simply weren't allowed to. But our plan moving forward is absolutely, we want to have these evacuation drills. We want to have them regularly. We want to have them throughout the district and throughout the city of Mill Valley. So look forward to that. Look for that happening. And I think that pretty much answers that question, unless I missed it.
Yeah. It's the one thing is too, is that you won't perform if you don't practice. And so, but practicing can happen in a big evacuation drill, but it also can happen with you and your family and just a few neighbors if you feel safe enough. So.
Yeah, that's, just to lead on that, you don't have to wait for us to practice to practice on your own. You can simply have 2 different ways that you're going to go. You can set a time. You can say, okay, this is our evacuation drill. We're gonna get up at 9 o'clock and we're gonna leave the house and we're gonna all evacuate to a specific location, and you can walk or ride your bike or drive a car, whatever you're gonna do to meet in that location. And that's a good way to practice.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, next is, and this is probably for you, Michael. Let's see, if we have to evacuate, will law enforcement be at Shoreline, Marin Avenue, and Tennessee Valley Road to direct traffic with the bottleneck that we have in this area?
The answer to that is yes. CHP is in charge of the highways and the roadways, and during an emergency evacuation order, CHP will go to all of the intersections and ensure that traffic is flowing, while the sheriff's office is going home to home, ensuring that people are aware and know that it's time to evacuate.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next for all of you is, what should people do if they are on a one-way out mountain narrow road and it gets blocked, and if there are no footpaths down?
Well, I mean, so that's one of the elements that we're talking about today, is that no 2 ways have 2 modes thing. And so if it gets blocked, you might have to exit your vehicle and you might have to move on a footpath or down a street. Generally down a street is the safest route to a community refuge area. If I heard the question, you kind of blinked out for me.
Sorry. The second part was if there are no footpaths.
Oh, yeah. Sergeant Dobbins, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so the question being how they evacuate if there's no footpaths.
Yes, and the road is blocked.
Yeah, if the road is blocked and there are no footpaths, like we saw up in Northern California, you're gonna have to get out of your car and walk on the roadway.
And related to that, if we live in the hills, how do we know if we should evacuate up or down?
So
I can take-
when we do the reverse alerts from the Alert Marin, instructions will be given in those alerts through Alert Marin, Nixle, or social media. And then obviously the news stations will cover it. And they'll give people a direction to go and likely a location to go.
And I can just add a little bit to that with a philosophy thing is that generally speaking, when you start high and you work your way low, survivability profile goes way up. So if you can work your way to the flats, what you don't want to do typically, unless the authorities are advising, is you don't want to move from high risk to higher risk to low risk. You want to move from high risk to low risk. And so generally speaking, if you can move from high down to the valley floor, to the TAM floor, your survivability profile is much better.
And this also is a hill question. If we live in the hills with very narrow roads, won't our cars get in the way of fire engines?
I can take that one as the operation chief. So, the law enforcement and fire folks all have radios to help coordinate. And so if it's possible, law enforcement might make one way and out for everybody and a one way and in, another road and in for the fire folks. You're exactly right. We have a challenging network of streets. And in fact, there's no shortage of challenges on our streets. But by simply controlling a few intersections, we can oftentimes make those arrangements for folks to come in. And remember, we're communicating in real time over radios about current situations and providing instructions to other engines on their approach to the incident. And I'm sure it's the same for our law enforcement partners as well.
Moving for the moment to CRAs, the community refuge areas. Does the evacuation checklist brochure have the Tam Valley CRA on it? And I do want to just quickly interject that I have posted a PDF in the chat that shows the CRAs if you don't already have them, but go ahead.
Yeah, the
Yep.
CRAs and the TRAs are both on the map. The TRA, it's a little confusing because there's two terms. They're both exactly the same thing. A TRA, temporary refuge area, is what the county is now using to identify those. We've called them CRAs, which are community refuge areas. The same exact thing. They're just temporary areas for you to go. They are listed on all the maps. The mailer brochure that was sent out again this year, so it's been out twice to Tam Valley, identifies those areas. And we actually are going to post that on our website. We just posted the Sausalito map on our website, but we'll be posting the Tam Valley, the Homestead Valley, the Alto Sudden, and then also the Mill Valley website has all the Mill Valley maps on it as well. And they're printable PDFs.
Great. Another CRA question, would an area like the Good Earth parking lot or even Coyote Creek be safe places? We live in Tam Junction, so the local CRAs would require us to move backwards towards the hill.
Yeah, you don't want to move backwards. You want to move out. I just had this question actually today about the CRAs in Sausalito. And we basically, a CRA is anywhere that's safe. So, like Chief Welch was saying, we identified areas, but if there's areas that have open space that you could temporarily be safe in, that's a CRA or a TRA. Bridgeway, on the other side of Bridgeway is CRA. On the other side of Shoreline Highway or Shoreline Highway, and also the Good Earth parking lot or any of that area, that's all CRA. So we identified areas that were in neighborhoods, but anything at the towards the water is definitely an area of refuge for sure.
And following up on that, someone specifically asked, would Eastwood Park be an appropriate CRA?
Yes.
Okay. And another CRA question is, if we go to Tam High School for our CRA, where do we park?
Well, if you have a car, you wouldn't park. You would keep going out of town. The idea of a CRA is that you have no other place at the time to go. You need to go. You need to move yourself out of the area. So, Chief Welch and I identified the football field as a TRA or CRA area. If you don't have a vehicle and you were forced to walk or ride your bike or something like that, that's where you would meet. But if you have a vehicle, just keep on trucking. Get out, try to get out of town. That's the best way to alleviate the backup and allow for emergency vehicles to get in.
Another very specific evacuation question, which I think is probably on many people's minds, is the nightmare scenario of a holiday weekend with thousands of cars on Shoreline Highway, people from out of the area visiting Muir Woods, the beaches, the mountain, the parklands. The question is, can we count on the CHP to be present and the sheriff to visit all homes? And the follow-up to that is, what kind of planning / coordination with the National Park Service and State Park is there?
That's a big question. I think I'll let
Mike Dobbins.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question again?
It's a two-part question. So the first part is nightmare scenario. It's a holiday weekend, thousands of cars on Shoreline Highway with people from out of the area visiting mountains, beaches, parklands, Muir Woods. Can we count on CHP to be present? And will the sheriff visit all our homes? What kind of planning coordination is there with the National Park Service and the state park?
So national parks and state parks will be one of the resources involved in the deployment of the operations order. CHP will get out there and they will divert traffic away from the incident, regardless of where it is. However, CHP is going to be a little bit delayed. And the sheriff's office will go door to door, contacting people and letting them know of the emergency.
Thank you.
And we'll use the Park Service to help do the evacuations as well.
Okay. One person asked, a Marin-wide evacuation webinar made a big point of going by car being much safer than on foot. Does this hold true for Southern Marin?
Yeah. So going by car is one of the safest approaches there is. Right up until the point it's not. And so there have been situations where a car stalls. Are you just going to sit in your car while it's stalled, or are you going to get into the next car that comes by and move your way out? That's what we talk about by being able to transition to two modes. And so there are videos after videos. In fact, I visited Paradise of cars burned out along the roads. They don't have people in them. So people actually got out of those vehicles and they made an exit towards another option, whether it's another vehicle or they walked out. And so it's very important to understand, as I said up front, that your car is one of the best and safest options. But sometimes stuff happens, especially in the narrow one-lane roads that we have throughout our community with infrastructure that was built at the turn of the century. And so things can go bad really quick. And as I said before, there's a million ways to fail at evacuation. And so being thoughtful and able to transition, and I don't know if I told this story, but I will real quickly. In Santa Rosa in 2017, there was a person who died in their garage. Their plan was plan A, get in their vehicle and drive out of the area. That was an excellent plan, right up until the point that the that the power was turned off and they couldn't access their garage door, and they didn't have backup battery power to open that garage door. They died in their vehicle in the garage. All they had to do in that situation was go to plan B. And that plan B could have been as simple as walk out and sit out in the middle of the street in that neighborhood. It was Coffee Park. And so the law enforcement folks, the fire folks, we use all the letters in the alphabet when we're building contingency plans to make sure that we're safe. And we're just asking people to think not just one way all the time. Think that is a good plan, drive out, but just have it in your mind that you're willing to transition and do something different. Should a tree come down? Should your car stall? Should something happen? It's just important that we be nimble in these situations. They're very dynamic.
Thank you. Next question. On average, how much notice to evacuate do you feel we may have?
Boy, that's the question of the day. Some of you might wake up to a bright fire just outside your house, and that's just a possibility. Not too long ago in the Ferndale Canyon, we had a structure fire, and there was folks that lived up above it, and they woke up to that, and they're like, "Holy mackerel, what do I do?" And so they had seconds to figure it out, and many of them just walked out of the area. But generally speaking, we're going to notify you with an alert and a warning, and that warning could be, a warning and an order, and there could be hours in between there. And there could be minutes and seconds in between there. So for the glass fire and the folks in Los Alamos, they had about 15 minutes to figure it all out. I've seen on the Tubbs fire, some people had seconds to figure it out. And here's a grab and go bag story real quick, and then maybe Sergeant Dobbins can pick it up. But during the Tubbs fire, there was a family I picked up. They were a husband and wife, and they were in their underwear. And the gal was in her underwear and a bra, and the gentleman was in his tidy whities. And I was going to pick them up in my vehicle, move them out of harm's way. And so I took them over to a mall, and I dropped them off. And they said, "You can't drop me off at this mall. We're in our underwear." And I said, "Watch me." And I kicked them out of my vehicle. And if there was ever a story to have a grab and go bag, that was it. If there was ever a story to have some extra clothes, that was it. But those folks sat in their underwear at the mall, safe, until the next morning. So that's it. I don't know, Sergeant Dobbins, you want to fill in the gaps on that one as far as time frames?
Yeah, the time frames vary. If the emergency happens in your backyard, obviously there's a lot less time. It's a good point you're making about grab and go bags. And here on the West Coast, we're very fortunate with fair weather. But on the East Coast and up north, people have safety kits and survival kits in the trunks of their cars in the event they get caught in storms. So it's like kind of the same thing here with the fires. We need to have those kits in our trunks and our bags ready to go by the doors just at all times in the event that it happens. And it will speed up the process. Ultimately, it's the preservation of life over property. And if saving your clothes is your priority, it's not a priority for the people that are doing the evacuations. So law enforcement isn't going to take a whole bunch of time for people to gather their belongings. They're simply going to move on to the next family and try to get the families out rather than the property.
Thank you. We have a number of more questions, and as long as you guys are comfortable, we'll go ahead and ask a couple of more. Is that okay? Okay. If one has both a car and an electric bike and does not know what lies ahead, which mode do you feel is best if one is choosing?
Car.
Next question. Realistically speaking, don't you think almost all the roads in the hills and in the flats are going to be in gridlock?
The potential exists, and that's why we need flexibility.
Now, here's some prevention questions. What should we be using to protect our attic vents from embers?
So there's
Go
a
ahead.
couple of different brands of venting material, but what you're really looking for is you're looking for a vent that has, the material is thin, so it's not the gaps are small, so less than 1/4 of an inch. There's a company that makes them called Vulcan. They make a vent that actually has a honeycomb in it. And if embers get into it, the honeycomb melts down and it has a vent in the back so it won't let the embers go through. It's a great product. There's other products on the market. You can Google, you can get them on Amazon. It kind of does the same thing, but there's a simple vent that, you know, doesn't cost quite as much as a Vulcan vent does. It has a 1/4 inch mesh in the front, and I think it's 16th inch mesh in the back. It's sandwiched together, and you can go out right now, pull all your vents off and replace those just right now. I mean, like, you can go to Goodman's Hardware and buy them.
Thank you. Any advice on safe ways to keep propane tanks for generators, barbecues, etc.?
So propane tanks, obviously, if they're on your barbecue, you know, you want to push those away from the house in a fire situation. You don't want to have them near your house. But a propane tank that's turned off, the valve is turned off and it's pushed away from your house, is a good location. You know, typically generators, normally the generators are natural gas when they're in, you know, if they're a fixed generator. We don't permit anything other than the natural gas. So if you do have other tanks, because some of them are flex fuel, you know, there are multiple fuels, I would say you need to store those propane tanks somewhere away from your structure, you know, somewhere safe, so that, you know, in the event that the fire gets close to where your generator is, the tank won't be affected. But typically it takes quite a bit of heat to get those tanks to rupture. And then as far as fuel goes, if you have just a regular basic generator that has, you know, it's like a portable generator that you plug into and you have gas cans for, you know, again, it's the safe place to store gasoline. Obviously they're in cans. You know, you don't want to store them near the generator. You want to store them in a safe, well vented location, and preferably in a flammable cabinet that's designed for the storage of gasoline.
I'm going to give you 3 questions that are similar in nature. They're about prevention. And so I'll say the 3 and then you can kind of answer globally. One of our exit routes is a road that is not county maintained and is terribly rutted to the point it is impassable. The adjacent homes are resistant to repairing it. Is there any way to require that it be repaired?
Must be Shasta we're talking about. Yeah, so we've been on this for quite a while. Unfortunately, the homeowner, there's a situation there between a property owner who owns the easement property there. The fire department can't do anything to force that to be paved because it is a private road, and it was never established as a paved road. So we go around, you know, we go back to northern, go around. Unfortunately, that's something that would probably be more of a civil situation than fire. But we've gone out there, knocked on doors, and done everything we possibly can to get people to understand that it's not just them, it's the whole community, you know, and in a lot of cases, the community actually wants to help pay for it. But there is some resistance because they don't want the traffic going up that road. By the way, I grew up on Browning Street. That's why I know this.
Thanks, Fred. And here are 2 similar types of questions. One is, what do we do about neighboring properties that are very overgrown and dry, even with overhanging vegetation on the roadway?
You call Marshall now.
And
Right.
Can we post Marshall's contact information in the
Yeah,
chat?
I think, I don't know if I put it on this one or the one I was just on. I
Okay.
can get it in there. But as far as what you can do as well, it is required up to 15 feet above. So over the roadways, all the roadways are being addressed by our paved road fuel reduction over time, but that doesn't alleviate the property owner's responsibility to have that vegetation cleared. If we get to it first, that's great. If there's resistance, then they're required to still do it. So in essence, inevitably, they will be addressed one way or another. But I always say vegetation management is like an apple. You can't eat it all in one bite. We have to work our way through it, one house at a time, one road at a time. And again, like Chief Hilliard said, get a hold of me. One of our inspectors, myself, will get out there. We'll take a look at it, and we'll evaluate the property in question. So
Yeah, we
I'll
actually
go ahead.
have, it's not just Marshall. I was just throwing him on the bus. We actually have quite a few defensible space inspectors, and then our engine companies do it as well. So if you just call the fire district main number, we'll get somebody to come out and take a look. And it's offered as a free service. And yeah, we want to address those situations when they come up.
And one of our attendees wanted to raise concerns about the impact of the vegetation, particularly the eucalyptus duff along Tennessee Valley Road from the Fernwood Cemetery, and how that might be addressed in terms of impacting evacuation.
Right. So yeah, obviously it's an impact, but Tennessee Valley Roads, fortunately, it's just, it's a straighter road than we have in the district, and it is pretty well maintained as far as the width of the road. There's not a whole lot of overhanging vegetation. It's still a very good escape route. Fire could burn right to the side of the road, or it could burn across it, but there's so much area behind and in front of it that it would still be a way to either go to the beach side or come back over to the shoreline highway side. As far as the vegetation is concerned, just to note, we got a grant, Southern Fire got a grant to do about 4.5 miles of vegetation fuel reduction up in Tam Valley. That's kind of one of the areas that we're looking at, not the whole Tennessee Valley Road, but in and around that area. And then we're also trying to work with the National Park Service to do some fuel reduction in that area as well.
Great, thank you. Here's one back to evacuation. If there is gridlock or very slow moving traffic and you need to decide whether to continue the snail's pace in your car or get out and walk, first, what do you do and how do you decide? And will there be a parking lane, or will cars start using that as an evacuation lane? Where do you leave your car if you have to leave it? And is it ever warranted to leave your car in the roadway blocking others behind you?
We've seen the traffic coming from Stinson Beach on the weekend, going to and from, and it gets really bad. And quite honestly, there's nowhere to stop and pull over in a lot of sections of the road through Tam Valley. The road's so narrow, and the shoulder is non-existent in a lot of areas. If the danger is right up upon you and you cannot move, it's time to get out of your car and start walking or running. But do your best to get off the road. If you damage your car trying to get off the road, it's much better to damage your car than your life. So get it out of the way as best you can and get away from the danger. If it's
one of the things, just to fill in on that, is, and this occurred, I've seen this actually a couple times, but we definitely saw it up in Paradise, where people were moving at a snail's pace down the skyline. And it wasn't until law enforcement put a program in place, CHP did, called Contraflow, where they ran along Highway 99, all the lanes from the north side of Skyway, all of them went to the north, and then they used all the lanes to go to the south. So typically there's 2 lanes to the north and 2 lanes to the south in that portion of Chico. But when they did that, what they did was they created space, and so folks could move from a snail's pace to a rabbit's pace to a jackalope's pace and get and move down out of the hill. And as soon as they're down out of the hill, that's where they're the safest. And so there are techniques and things that our law enforcement partners are very adept at to create space and move folks out. We wish they would do it on a Saturday and Sunday, beautiful day to clear Tam Valley out, but it's just not warranted then. So, but during these situations, they have techniques to be able to move folks around and control intersections.
A quick follow-up to the question about electric bike versus car. Can you elaborate on why the car is preferable?
So the car provides a level of protection in and around it, and can generally go for further distances. Your car can take some heat, Fire engines take some heat. I can show you some pictures here of a recent fire up on the Glass Fire where we're working in and around some heat. It's just that, and on a bike, you have none of those protections, but you're trading off the protection versus maybe the speed of getting somewhere. And so I think your car is your first safest bet. My whole point here, though, is to understand that you have options and that you're thinking about those options so that you can make a good decision.
If you're evacuating, should you turn off the gas from PG&E to your house?
I don't think so. No, I would. I don't think that's in our recommendations to you. I'm not sure that I would waste time doing that. What happens essentially is that once the home burns down, where the gas comes out of the ground, there will be about a 2 to 3 foot flame that will just go until PG&E secures it. And those are generally not harmful to folks. So in an earthquake, I would only turn off the gas if I smelled gas. And in an earthquake also, I mean, there's different valves you can put on your gas so to where when it trembles, it will automatically shut your gas off by dropping a marble over the hole. But in a wildland fire, no, we're not instructing folks to turn their gas off before they leave. We just want them to leave.
Good. I know we have a lot of questions and we could probably ask questions for the next couple of hours. And we are going to take all the questions that are in the chat and we will post anything that wasn't answered. We're going to post on the Tam Valley NRG website page and we'll put that in the chat for you too. We do want to make sure everybody gets off and gets back to their lives. I'm going to ask one last short question before we start our wrap up, which was, do generators require permits?
So I can answer that. So if it's a portable generator, meaning that literally like a contractor, wheeled type generator that uses gasoline, that is not require a permit. We do want people to operate those safely though, and think about carbon monoxide poisoning. We don't want them in the garages. That's not a good place for them. And then the storage of the fuel, which is usually gasoline. And then of course, where it plugs into the house, we want them to be very careful and use the proper electrical codes for that. If it's a permanent generator, it does require a permit. The permit would be obtained through the building department. And then we'd also have some standards and requirements for that. And those are generally in the residential neighborhood. They're all natural gas. So they run off of the natural gas. Some of them are dual fuel, so they have natural gas and they have propane. But I also want to give this other idea out there, which is a really kind of picking up momentum, is power walls. Battery power walls and battery backup instead of the generator use, where people have solar panels, they can add the power walls. They do a really good job of supplying a battery, a power backup. A lot of homes now don't use as much power because a lot of our devices are all low voltage and our lights are now LEDs. So it's a viable option now, and somebody should explore that as at the same time they're exploring generators.
Great. Thanks so much, Fred. Okay. And again, I know we still have more questions to answer, and we will do this again as well. I know that it's important to get our questions answered. It's also important to keep getting information so that we're familiar with it, and so that if in a disaster, we don't freeze and think, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. And all of us need to hear these things more than once. So, but we are going to wrap it up now, and I'm going to turn it over to Ted and thank Michael and Marshall and Chris and Tom's and Fred so very much for making yourselves available to us and for everything you do to help us be safe. We really appreciate it. So, and with that, Ted?
Yeah, just a few more comments. First of all, I want to let everybody know this has been recorded, or this is being recorded, and we will post the recording of this meeting on the Tam Valley NRG website as soon as we can. If you have further questions that weren't able to post, please send them to tamvalleynrg@gmail.com. That's also where, if you're interested in becoming a block captain for Tam Valley NRGs, please send an inquiry there. We really need people from all kinds of neighborhoods, so we welcome you. I also want to say that for those of you who have received notice of the emergency drill on Sunday to post OK and help signs, it's our first effort at a small emergency drill, in coordination with the Mill Valley NRG network, but don't forget to do that. Also, again, topics for future meetings, future of these community forums. We have the November 17th meeting coming up. We want to have them on a quarterly basis. So if there are topics that are related to emergencies and whatnot here in Tam Valley, we would love that. And just so you know, there's a question about trails and paths. There's a group in Tam Valley that is working on identify what all those paths are and which ones are blocked and which ones are open. And we are dedicated to posting all of those on the Tam Valley NRG map, which is on the website. So, that's coming. And there's a lot of them that are blocked, so we have to figure out what to do with that. But I think that's it for now. Thank you so much again to everybody for coming and to our first responders for being so open. And Tom, I do have a question for you. How fast does a jackalope run?
I was going to ask that.
I don't know. It seemed right at the time. It's a good question.
Well, maybe you can do some research on that. And get
Yeah.
Hey, Ted, one last thing I'd just like to leave everybody with is another really fantastic website, but just actually packed full of information is Fire Safe Marin. So if you go to firesafemarin.org, it's got a ton of information on a lot of the questions that were asked tonight. So, and our website, of course, at smfd.org and millvalleyfire.org. So thank you.
Firewise, let's not forget Firewise, one of our sponsors, who will be hosting the next meeting on November 17th. Everybody have a great night. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks to everybody for your participation.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Be safe.
Thanks, everybody.
Pack a go bag.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And Tom, I'm just going to try and get all the information from the chat.
Okay.
Try and find her.
And then I'll be sending you along the registration list. I think I can export that to you.
Yeah, thank you.
And then,
very much.
Jim, does that help you at all to have that as well with your efforts? Jim Casper?
Yes, it would. Thank you.
Okay, I'll do that.
Good. I know we kept you guys a little bit over, and I apologize. It just seemed like there was a lot of interest and enthusiasm, so I wanted to make sure we answered as many questions as we could.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to be here. We work for you, so. All right.
Well, to make sure you can work for us, go home and get some sleep. Okay.
All right. Take care, everyone.
All right. You guys take care. Good to see you.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.